$15. That is the price tag on the Blue Jug sitting in the back of a diesel truck at every truck stop in America. And it is the same jug an Amish farmer in Lancaster County will quietly pour onto his front lawn on a Saturday morning while the rest of the neighborhood is loading up $60 bags of synthetic fertilizer from the big box store. You walk outside with your coffee, you look at the strip of grass by the mailbox, the one that went yellow in late June and never really came back, and you tell yourself this is the year you fix it. You bought the 4-step program. You watered exactly like the bag said, and by the second week of July, that same tired patch is staring back at you, thin and pale, like nothing you did in April even happened. Here is who is quietly working against you. It is not the weather. It is the lawn care industry that has spent 40 years convincing you that a healthy lawn requires a shelf full of branded bags, a spreader calibrated to a setting nobody can find, and a schedule built around their sales calendar, not around your soil. The guy in the green apron at the garden center is not lying to you on purpose. He is reading the same label you are, and that label is built to sell you the next bag, not to fix your lawn. So every spring you do the same 3 things. You dump a heavy starter fertilizer in April because the bag says so. You water every single evening because your neighbor does. And you mow it short on Sunday because it looks tidy that way. And every August, the lawn looks exactly like it did last August. Pale. Patchy. Stressed. Bouncing back for about 9 days after a rain and then giving up again. In the next few minutes, I am going to show you 2 completely different problems that are silently destroying your lawn right now, and the cheap, almost embarrassing fixes the Amish have been using for generations while the rest of us were busy reading the back of a 50-pound bag. The first half is about color and density, the reason your grass looks tired even when it is technically alive. The second half is about the soil underneath, which is the part nobody talks about because there is no bag to sell you. And then, at the end, I am going to show you the one trick involving that $15 Blue Jug from the truck stop, the trick that should not legally work on a residential lawn and yet does, and it is the entire reason I am making this video. I am not going to name it yet, just sit with the question for a minute, because before I show you that, I need to ask you something. What if the fertilizer you bought this spring is actually the reason your lawn keeps crashing in July? Part 1 is the problem you can see from the street, the yellowing and thinning that makes a lawn look tired in midsummer. And I am starting here because this is the version of the pain that hits 90% of homeowners first. Here's what you instinctively do. You see the color fade, you assume the lawn is hungry, you go buy a high nitrogen fertilizer with a big first number on the bag, something like a 2904, and you spread it on a warm afternoon hoping for that deep green color by the weekend. It feels logical. Yellow means hungry, hungry means feed it. And for about 10 days, it works. The blades green up. You feel like a genius. Then by day 14, the lawn looks worse than it did before you fed it. Here is what is actually happening beneath your feet. Synthetic nitrogen at that concentration releases roughly 70% of its payload in the first 2 weeks. Your grass takes that nitrogen and forces a burst of top growth, long, soft blades, the kind that look great for a photo and have almost no root behind them. Meanwhile, the salt index of that fertilizer, and every synthetic nitrogen source has one, pulls moisture out of the soil microbes that were keeping your root zone alive. You did not feed the lawn, you fed the leaves and starved the roots. Most people think a yellow lawn is a hungry lawn. The truth is, a yellow lawn in July is almost always a thirsty root system sitting in dead soil. So here is the correct sequence. Cheapest first. Start with a soil moisture check, and I mean a literal screwdriver. Push a 6-inch flathead straight down into the lawn. If it stops at 2 inches, your soil is compacted and your roots are living in the top 2 inches of dirt, which is exactly why they fry the second the temperature hits 85. That test costs you nothing. Next, switch your watering from every evening, which is what your neighbor is doing wrong, to deep watering twice a week, about 45 minutes per zone, early morning between 4 and 7 a.m. That trains the roots to chase moisture down to 4 and 5 inches instead of camping at the surface. Then, instead of the high nitrogen bag, use a slow release organic source. something like a 620 feather meal or a Milorganite style product at roughly 15 pounds per 1,000 square feet. It costs about $18 a bag. It releases over 6 to 8 weeks instead of 2. And because it has almost no salt index, it actually feeds the soil biology that feeds your grass. If you skip this and keep dumping synthetic nitrogen on a stressed lawn in July, here is what you lose. You lose 6 to 8 weeks of regrowth because once the crown of the grass plant browns out in heat, it does not snap back for the rest of the season. You spend the money twice, once on the fertilizer that cooked it and again on seed in September. And the bare patches you ignore in August become the exact spots where crabgrass germinates next May. The universal prevention tip for part 1 is simple. Never fertilize a lawn that is already stressed. If the blades fold in half when you walk on them, the lawn is telling you it needs water and rest, not food. Quick thing before I go into part 2, because what is coming next is the part nobody on the garden aisle will ever tell you. If this is the kind of information you wish someone had given you 10 years ago, hit the subscribe button right now. That is the whole channel. Plain English, real numbers, no bag selling, one click, and you are in. Part 2 is a completely different problem, and I want to be very clear, this is not the same fix wearing a different hat. Part 1 was about what the grass blade is doing above the soil. Part 2 is about what is happening 4 to 6 inches down in the part of your lawn you have never actually looked at. Here is the thesis. Your lawn is not struggling because it is hungry. Your lawn is struggling because the soil underneath it has gone biologically dead. And once that happens, no fertilizer on earth will fix it. The catastrophic consequence here is the one that takes months, not weeks, to undo. When soil microbes die off, and they die off from compaction, from chemical salt buildup, from years of synthetic-only feeding, your grass roots stop being able to access the nutrients that are already in the soil. The nitrogen is there, the phosphorus is there, the iron is there, but without living microbes to break those nutrients down into a form roots can absorb, it might as well be locked in a safe. You can spread $100 of fertilizer on dead soil and your lawn will still look hungry because the delivery system is broken. So here are the 3 methods. Simplest and cheapest first. Method 1 is brewed compost tea, and this is the one the Amish have been doing for over a century. You take 1 shovel of finished compost, drop it in a 5-gallon bucket of unchlorinated water, let it sit for 48 hours with a stick stirred through it twice a day, and then pour it across about 1,000 square feet of lawn with a watering can. Total cost, under $3 if you have a compost pile, under $12 if you buy a bag. What it actually does is reintroduce billions of beneficial bacteria and fungi into your root zone in a single application. Within about 21 days, you will see the color shift from pale yellow-green to a deep, almost waxy green that synthetic fertilizer cannot replicate because that color comes from the plant accessing iron and magnesium it could not reach before. Method 2 is core aeration combined with a top dress of compost, and this is the one to do in early September in the north or October in the south. You rent a core aerator for about $70 for 4 hours, pull plugs across the entire lawn, and then spread a 1/4 inch of screened compost over the top, raking it into the holes. The aerator breaks the compaction layer that is suffocating your roots. The compost fills those channels with living soil 4 inches down, exactly where the next generation of roots is going to grow. One application in the fall changes the entire trajectory of your lawn the following spring. Method 3 is the one a professional turf manager would reach for, and this is liquid humic and fulvic acid applied at roughly 6 ounces per 1,000 square feet, mixed in a hose end sprayer with a gallon of water. A bottle runs about $35 and treats a 1/4 acre twice. Humic acid is essentially concentrated, decomposed organic matter, and what it does mechanically is chelate the locked up nutrients in your soil, meaning it grabs them and presents them to the root in a form the plant can actually absorb. It is the closest thing to a cheat code that exists in lawn care, and almost no homeowner has ever heard of it because there is no flashy bag for it on the shelf at the big box store. Part 3, prevention, and this is the moment I promised you at the start, the trick that should not work, the one involving that $15 blue jug from the truck stop. The Amish trick is diesel exhaust fluid sold under the name Blue DEF, and before you close this video, let me explain exactly why it works, because the mechanism is real and it is not a gimmick. Blue DEF is 32.5% urea dissolved in deionized water. Urea is the single most concentrated, plant-available form of nitrogen that exists, the same compound your expensive fertilizer is built around, and because it is already dissolved in pure water with no salts and no fillers, it absorbs into the grass blade within hours instead of weeks. The Amish figured out generations ago that a small dose of urea solution sprayed lightly across a lawn gives the grass a fast green up without the salt damage of a granular fertilizer. The modern version is just buying a 2.5-gallon jug of Blue DEF for about $15 at any truck stop, mixing 1 cup into a gallon of water in a pump sprayer, and lightly misting up to 1,000 square feet. 1 jug treats your entire lawn 4 or 5 times across the season. The cost per application works out to about $3. Compare that to a $60 bag of synthetic fertilizer that lasts 1 feeding, and you understand why this trick has quietly survived for 150 years while the industry pretended it did not exist. It saves you roughly $200 a year on fertilizer alone, and because there is no salt load, it never burns the lawn the way a misapplied granular will. Now, which approach is right for you? If you have right lawn, like if you have a smaller suburban lot under a 1/4 acre and you just want a thicker, greener lawn without a lot of equipment, start with the compost tea and the Blue DEF spray. Those two together, done 4 times between April and September, will outperform any 4-step bag program on the market for under $50 a year. If you have a larger property, 1/3 of an acre or more, and the soil has been compacted for years from kids, dogs, or just time, you need the core aeration and compost top dress in the fall, because no spray will fix a soil that has gone hard as a driveway. And if you are the homeowner who wants the deepest, darkest, most uniform color on the street, and you do not mind spending a little more, layer the humic acid on top of everything else, and you will have the lawn the neighbors quietly ask you about by the end of August. Now, here is what is going to happen to you in about 3 weeks if you do everything I just told you. Your lawn is going to thicken up, and as it thickens, you are going to start noticing a layer of brown, spongy material right at the soil line in between the green blades. That is thatch, and it is the next problem you will have to deal with because a thick lawn produces thatch faster than a thin one, and if you let it build past 1/2 inch, it will suffocate everything we just rebuilt. If you are already seeing that brown spongy layer down at the base of your grass, drop the word thatch in the comments below. Just that one word. So I know how many of you are at that stage. The next video is going to show you exactly how to break down a thatch layer in 14 days without renting a dethatcher and without tearing your lawn to pieces. And I am going to walk you through it with the same kind of numbers and mechanism I just used here. Subscribe so it shows up in your feed the day it goes live, because if you miss it, you will spend the rest of the summer wondering why a lawn that looked perfect in June started thinning out again in August. 1 click, and I will see you in the next one. Before you click away, though, I want to give you a few more pieces of this puzzle, because there are details that separate the people who get a decent result from the people who get the lawn that stops traffic, and these are the details nobody talks about on the gardening channels. Let us talk about water, because everything we just discussed is worthless if you irrigate wrong. The Amish farms I studied in Lancaster County back in the 1980s, before municipal water became common out there, relied on deep, infrequent soakings from rain barrels and hand watering, and the grassroots followed that water down. University of Nebraska research published in 1997 by Dr. Roche-Gaussoin confirmed what those farmers already knew. Lawns watered for 20 minutes every day grow roots that are 2 to 3 inches deep. Lawns watered for 90 minutes once a week grow roots that are 8 to 12 inches deep. That is a 400% difference in drought resistance from one scheduling change. So after you spread your compost, your molasses, your humic acid, set your sprinkler for one long session on a Saturday morning at 5 a.m. Let it run until you see a 1/4 inch of water in a tuna can placed on the grass, and then walk away until the following Saturday. Do not touch it midweek, even if the tips look a little dull. The roots are chasing the water down, and every time you give them a sip at the surface, you train them to stay shallow. And a shallow lawn is a lawn that browns out the first week of August when the temperature hits 94 degrees. Now, the counter argument I always hear is this: someone in the comments will say, my grandfather never put compost or molasses on his lawn and it looked fine for 40 years. And that is true, and I'm not going to pretend it is not. But here's what changed. Soil organic matter in the average American suburban lot has dropped from around 4% in 1955 to under 1.5% today, according to USDA soil survey data compiled in 2019. Your grandfather inherited dirt that already had the biology in it. He was coasting on deposits made by prairie grasses and farm rotations going back 150 years. You are not. The lot your house sits on was probably scraped down to subsoil by a bulldozer in 1998, had 4 inches of cheap topsoil rolled over it, and got sodded the week before the realtor took photos. You are starting from a deficit your grandfather never faced, and that is why the old methods alone will not save you, and why the Amish trick, which was originally a soil rebuilding trick disguised as a lawn trick, works so dramatically on modern suburban ground. One last thing. Mow at 3.5 inches, never shorter, and leave the clippings on the lawn. Every bag of clippings you haul to the curb is roughly a quarter pound of nitrogen you paid for and then threw away. And over a summer, that adds up to about $40 of fertilizer per 1,000 square feet sitting at the dump. Leave them, let them feed the system you just built.